It was November 1983. The Cold War wasn't just chilly, it was rapidly freezing over. The world was on a razor's edge, convinced that the next war would be the last. But what if I told you that the closest we ever came to global nuclear annihilation wasn't a Soviet missile launch or a Cuban standoff, but a simple, pre-planned military exercise? The exercise was called Able Archer 83, and for 4 terrifying days, Soviet intelligence wasn't sure if it was a drill and all. They believed they were witnessing the final countdown to a genuine surprise attack. This is the story of the near miss that history almost forgot. To understand Able Archer, you have to understand the paranoia of 1983. Détente was dead. President Reagan had labeled the USSR the evil empire. The US was stationing Pershing II nuclear missiles in Europe, capable of hitting Moscow within minutes. On the Soviet side, fear was not just political rhetoric, it was institutionalized. They were convinced that NATO planned a decapitating first strike, aiming to eliminate the Soviet leadership before they could retaliate. This fear had its own codename, Operation Reagan, the constant monitoring for a nuclear missile attack. That year was already a chain reaction of close calls.
Just 2 months before, a Soviet fighter jet shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007, killing 269 people. The atmosphere was poisonous. The threshold for miscalculation was dangerously low. Into this hyper-paranoid climate, NATO launched Able Archer 83 on November 7th. Every year, NATO conducted exercises, but this one was different. This one simulated the entire process of going from conventional war to full nuclear conflict. First, the simulation of a Soviet invasion of Europe. Then, the inevitable conventional defeat of NATO forces. Finally, the dramatic final step, authorization for a nuclear counterattack. What made Able Archer so believable to the Soviets? 3 key things. First, the participants. Unlike previous drills, Able Archer involved the actual heads of government and top political leaders, not just military stand-ins. Second, the communications. NATO used brand new, highly encrypted communication codes and procedures, the ones that would be used in a real war. They even practiced secure radio silence. And third, the phasing. The drill was structured in a way Soviet analysts had long predicted a surprise attack would unfold, a rapid escalation to the highest alert level, DEFCON 1. For Moscow, this wasn't a drill timeline, it was a checklist. When the reports hit Moscow, the Soviet leadership, already terrified by the Pershing missiles and Operation Ran, drew a terrifying conclusion. Able Archer 83 was a ruse. It was the final stage of the US plan for a surprise attack. The paranoia was acute. The KGB station chiefs in Europe were ordered to search relentlessly for any signs that a nuclear attack was imminent. Unusual lights in government buildings, extended working hours, anything. But the most critical reaction was military. Soviet air forces in East Germany and Poland were put on high alert. Aircraft in these forward positions were loaded with nuclear warheads. For the first time, Soviet leadership genuinely believed the war was hours away. The situation was compounded by a complete failure of mutual understanding. The West saw a routine, if realistic, exercise. The East saw an invasion plot unfolding in plain sight. The critical moment arrived when Moscow issued orders to its forces that NATO analysts later referred to as the unannounced step, a level of readiness that went beyond anything seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The world did not end. Able Archer 83 concluded on November 11th, and Soviet forces eventually stood down. But for the West, the realization of how close they had come was chilling. Much of what we know about the depth of the Soviet fear comes from a handful of intelligence assets, most famously KGB defector Oleg Gordievsky. He risked his life to confirm that Moscow truly feared a NATO first strike. It was only after reading the intelligence reports that President Ronald Reagan had his famous moment of clarity. He wrote in his diary about the need to reassure the Soviets that the US was not seeking a first strike. Able Archer was a turning point. It led directly to a shift in US strategy. The rhetoric softened, and Reagan began prioritizing personal diplomacy with the new Soviet leader, Mikhail Gorbachev. Able Archer 83 stands as a terrifying reminder that even routine training can trigger global conflict when paranoia is running high. It was the moment we nearly traded a military exercise for the end of the world, and we were lucky that the system held. What other forgotten Cold War crisis deserves the spotlight? Let us know in the comments below. If you want more untold stories from behind the Iron Curtain, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We'll see you next time.